Welcome, everybody, to the Digital Enterprise Society webinar series. We're excited to bring you today's session, 3 Strategies for Leaders to Enable Digital Transformation, brought to you by Vertex. My name is Courtney McWhirter. I will be your host for today. I am the Marketing Communications Manager here at Digital Enterprise Society. If you have any questions about Digital Enterprise Society or becoming a member or getting involved, navigating the website, feel free to contact me. I'm happy to help you work through that. Digital Enterprise Society is a nonprofit member association organized to enable the transformation of product development, design, delivery, and maintenance throughout the digital enterprise, regardless of the software tools you're using. We are dedicated to the transformation of the manufacturing enterprise workforce. If you're not already a member of DES, we invite you to join us, and you can join for free using the promo code at the bottom of your screen there, webinar21. I'd also like to encourage you to check out our upcoming roundtable. This is the third installment of our Change series, and it will be hosted by Nan Braun on the topic of value of change. It takes place next Thursday, so a week from today, July 22nd, same time at 2 p.m. I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the chat for you where you can find out more information, but this is a unique opportunity. We'll have a little bit of a presentation from Nan, and then it's really your opportunity to chat with peers across the globe in different industries and whatnot, to share your experience, brainstorm solutions, and gain feedback, and kind of outside the bubble of your organization. So we hope you'll join us for that. Again, that's next Thursday, and I will put a link in the chat of where you can find out more about that. Today's presentation will be brought to you by Shree. Shree is the Senior Vice President of Digital Transformation Strategy at Vertex. And before I pass it over to Shree, we actually have a quick poll for you. So if you bring your attention to your screen, I'm going to launch this poll, and we'd like to know, how risk tolerant is your company? Not at all tolerant, a little bit tolerant, somewhat tolerant, tolerant, or very tolerant? Let us know. How tolerant are you to risk? Pretty much everybody started out there. Everybody was not tolerant at all, or just a little bit. Okay, now we have 17% saying very tolerant, 33% at tolerant, and 33 with a little bit tolerant, and 17 at not at all. Thank you very much for submitting. If you haven't, real quick, we'll give it a few more seconds. It looks like about half of you have submitted an answer there. A few more came in for very tolerant, so that's nice to see. Kind of mainly balanced out now between a little bit tolerant, and very tolerant. So again, thank you for participating in that poll. I'm going to go ahead and close that for us. And now I'm going to pass it over to Shree. Thank you, Shree, and Vertex, so much for bringing us this presentation today. And if you could hold, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, go ahead and put them in the questions box. But I'm going to ask, we'll kind of get to all those questions at the very end of the presentation. We'll have a brief Q&A at the end. So I'm going to hand the presentation over to Shree and let him get started.
Thank you so much for that brief overview and introduction. And you know, needless to say, that poll talked about pretty much what I guess we've been seeing throughout. You know, earlier it was skewed to one side where people weren't very, or rather they were risk averse. But now we are seeing that the trend is more like a bit of a, you know, regular normal distribution, right? Anyway, quickly, a very quick introduction. I'm the global VP, the senior VP for digital transformation at Vertex. I used to be the global VP for PLM at Tata Technologies, and I was also the CIO. And prior to that, I ran the digital factory products line at Siemens PLM. And for those people who've been following the PLM business right from the engineering animation days in the 90s through Unigraphics, UGS, and EDS, right? So my areas of expertise, really, I'm a manufacturing guy who got into technology over the years. And so anything to do with factory of the future, smart factory, I'm very passionate about discrete manufacturing as it's used in the context of digital manufacturing, right? The things that I consult with for my clients and for folks is, everybody wants to run a digital transformation, digital twin exercise, and they want to know how, right? How do you do whatever you want to do with the technology that we currently have in the marketplace, right? And of course, there's a lot between how software tools and technologies are marketed versus reality is a little bit different. I won't say vastly different, but it ends up being elements in interpretation, right? So I think that's something that you folks can ask me, or anybody can ask me about, about the technology or the market of them. So very quick look at history. History teaches us a lot. 1996, Kodak, Eastman Kodak, as it started out in the 1800s, it was at its heyday, right? Everybody talks about this, Their revenues were 16 billion, their valuation was 31 billion. For 1996, it was pretty remarkable, right? Number five most valuable brand in the world, right? At the same time, 1996, we see Apple, and they were losing money hand over fist, right? And the next quarter after that, Q3, Q4, they started to kind of eke up a little bit, right? And that December, Steve Jobs would be returning back to the company. The reason I talk about this is it's stark. It's kind of, it tells us a lot about culture, about what we can learn from not just these two companies, but from others as well, right? And you can see, right, from 16 billion to now, they're kind of a shadow of their former self, but they're doing a lot of the things that they should have done many, many, many years ago, I suppose. Apple, on the other hand, I don't need to talk about their rise, but it's evident that if you take certain decisions on product, on strategy, on business, and hopefully these are well thought out, you get to win, right? So fundamentally, what was the difference? In my opinion, again, is it's about taking risks, and it's about the kind of leadership we want to cultivate in our organizations, right? So again, this is how I like to think about it. Do you want to have a Kodak moment, or do you want to have an Apple moment, right? There is so much arrogance with very large companies that have been around 50, 60, 70, 100 years, and that they think that they're too big to fall, and nothing can touch them, right? But over and over, multiple companies, even, I read an article on GE many moons ago in the Wall Street Journal, and it chronicled everything that had happened over the years, right? And while there are many theories about why this would happen, I just put it very simply in this slide. Do you want to have an Apple moment, or do you want to have a Kodak moment? And we talk about different kinds of leaders, right? So this graphic hopefully conveys that. So there are a whole bunch of people that say they are fine, right? The orange and the yellow. The yellow people would say, yeah, we're fine. Could we be better? Always room for improvement. Yeah, but is the risk worth it, right? And I think when people start talking like that, that inertia is going to be much harder to overcome than anything else, right? Of course, there are the others that, the people in the green, where they're always pushing the envelope, and you don't need to worry about those, because those are mostly self-motivated folks that will do what needs to be done to push their organizations forward, right? And then there's the last bit, again, in any statistical distribution, you have these stragglers at the other end of the pendulum who, just don't care. So there's no point in wasting effort or money on those either, right? The green ones, you don't need to spend money or effort because they're already motivated. The bulk of the work is really in the we are fine and we could be better, but is the risk worth it, right? The folks that you know that I talk about here, it's really hard, right? And I don't know how many of you have heard of this company called HCL, and their earlier CEO Vineet Nair wrote a book called Employees First, Customers Second. It was a very very thought-provoking and one might say agitating title, but his point was that if you take care of the employees, the customers would be taken care of because there's that much motivation and everything else, right? But at that time, when he rejigged the organization, and his book talks about that, when he rejigged the organization and pivoted them towards a different growth trajectory, they were growing at about 30% CAGR, right? And it was, they were just absolutely at the top of the field and everything was great. But the leadership saw something and they figured that, the telltale signs are there for a decline, and if they don't arrest it soon enough, something will be bad. And that's where we talk about the first type of risk-averse leaders, where they say good is good enough, right? And we need to change that. Okay. The second type is folks that have a heck of a lot of experience or a lot of belief, right? And they've apparently tried lots of things, and they say that this is the way, and if there was a better option, I would have seen it, right? And we've all seen these kind of leaders in our organizations, and we need to continuously kind of open their minds and say, hey, perhaps there's a different way, and show them examples of how things could be different, and show them examples of how different people have tried other things. And it's a slight bit of a painful process, but we need to be able to go in front of them and show them different examples and tacitly, convey this doubt that maybe there are other ways to do things, right? And of course, there are, and a lot of times these kind of leaders become, and we are guilty of it, right? I mean, success is what breeds this kind of behavior. If I am successful, it must mean that whatever I've tried in the past was right, isn't it? I mean, if I'm thinking like that, then it's very hard for somebody to say, Shree, maybe you wanna reconsider, right? And maybe there's a better way, or maybe there's a different way of doing things. And unless I keep my mind open for that, there's no way that my mind can be changed and I can do things differently as people would want me to, right? So this is the way is also a very big or set of users or set of leaders who perhaps stifle progress in many ways. Yeah. The third is the optimists, and they call themselves realists, but they say we are the market leaders and we are growing at a remarkable rate, right? And I gave you the example of HCL earlier, and whether you talk about GE or whether you talk about HCL or any other company out there, right? that are at the top of their field and they are growing and all the numbers are pointing to the right direction, one must still look for options, and one must still look for gaps and white spaces that you could make some improvements in, right? So at that point, the bean counters come in saying that, okay, if we spend X, would we get that much of a growth, right? And that might not be. Let's say you're at 95%. I'm just giving a general figure. To go from 90 or from 80 to 90% was kind of easy. You could do it. From 90 to 95, it was harder, but you've got to a point where you're really, clipping at a good speed. But from 95 up, the investments in every half a percent point improvement might not be commensurate with the numbers that you've been spending or the growth rate that you've been seeing before, right? And so one needs to also look at that and say, hey, you know what, we need to do this, otherwise we're going to slip in the near future. And one of the things, I mean, everybody's heard the Apple story, right? One might say that Apple is an aberration, and for all practical purposes, they might have been. But unless we keep trying, and failure teaches us a lot, right? Failure teaches us what not to do, or what we tried and didn't work, or what we tried didn't work because of a certain reason that we may want to address and then improve. And I think those are the kinds of things that we need to do as in organizations, right? So, anybody that's seen the Steve Jobs couple of movies that came out, or read the books that multiple people have written, everything talks about the fact that they capitalized on risk, right? And they took chances that others simply didn't. And I think it's about time, and the millennial generation, right, is teaching us, a lot of us that the X or the Y or whatever you want to call them, generations, that it's okay to try different things, and it's okay to not see success every day, right? And a lot of times, the number of startups that have come up and tried different things, or the number of entrepreneurs who call themselves serial entrepreneurs who tried different things and then eventually succeeded. Every one of those cases tells us that failure is an inherent part of success. And if you don't have failure, then I don't think, at least I believe, I don't think you will succeed, right? And I think if we can address that element as well, that removes a huge obstacle and impediment for our companies to succeed. One last thing that I want to talk about, I don't know how many of you have heard of Abraham Wolt. This statistician, mathematician, he helped in World War II, where all these bombers were coming back with bullet holes all over them, right? And the natural instinct for designers was, wherever you see the maximum number of bullet holes, let's try to reinforce those areas or fix them, right? And make the design stronger in those areas. His statistical model said, well, you're looking at planes that return. You didn't look at planes that did not come back. So if you looked at that, and if you looked at areas that that have the most, I guess, eyeballs on, in this particular case, these bullet holes, then you may not be, addressing the real problem. And his analysis essentially pointed to various areas of the airplane that need to be reinforced, right? And which they did, and that saved many lives, and that and many people say that that won the war as well, right? So the reason I mention this is again to highlight the fact that our failed projects tell us a lot more about success, about how we can succeed in the future than our successes that we have seen in the past. And the other thing is, build an appetite for success, right? Build excitement. You look at kids, they'll try the most amazing things, and they would do things that one wouldn't think of. And I was hiking the other day through some trails, and there was a little bitty stream, right? It wasn't too deep or anything, and there was a branch over it, and these kids were going over the branch and then hanging from the branch and jumping to the other side. And unfortunately, I didn't take any pictures, otherwise I would have shown it here. But it just blew my mind. I mean, our instinct was, well, don't do that because it might be dangerous. You might break your leg, or you might make your clothes wet, and for the remainder part of the day you're miserable. I mean, you're thinking about all these quote unquote adult things, whereas those kids, they weren't thinking about that. They were just focused on the goal, right? So I think that's important, and what that gives you is that excitement will remove a lot of the risk averseness or risk averse behavior that comes in most companies. Okay. With that, a little bit about Vertex, right? So we are a visualization company, right? We visualize product. So product gets designed in multiple ways, through different CAD systems, and there are a whole host of processes that run to take a product from ideation to a reality, right? Where you can order the product and you can sit in it, drive in it, you can fly in it, you can use it as a game, as an entertainment model, or whatever else, right? I mean, all the different things that we use in daily life. The one thing that has been really hard is collaboration amongst all the different engineers across the enterprise. Everybody talks about wanting to make digital twin projects a reality. They want to make Industry 4.0 a reality. Proofs of concept, proofs of value have all been done, but when it comes down to it, we saw that product visualization, or taking the 3D of the product and democratizing it, or making that 3D available for everyone, had become the the key I guess impediment, the bane of most of these products, right? And then once you have that as the central focus, because it's easy to look at 3D or look at a product in that view, and then say, okay, now I can make decisions, and then connecting data elements to that is what was I guess the problem statement. And at Vertex, we managed to solve it. And basically, what we are is we are a low-code 3D digital twin platform. Okay, any size model. We can go from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of lines of BOM, or bill of materials, as we like to call it. And number of users doesn't matter, and any device, right? It was impossible, right, before this, to look at a product, a car, a plane, an earth-moving machinery, or whatever else, on a laptop, leave alone a mobile handset, right? And we managed to do that, and it's quite something. And to render these very complex model in a few seconds, as opposed to 30, 40, 50 minutes, is also something that has impressed our customers, and quite really given a boost in the arm for all digital twin and Industry 4.0 and smart factory projects out there. And the best thing, there is no software to install, right? So on the client end, there is no, you don't need to put in an extension on the web browser. You don't need, I mean, if you can view a YouTube video, you should be able to view and interrogate and spin and cut cross sections off a 3D complex CAD model of any product that you're working with. And with that, I think I'll take your questions if those have come in. Courtney, all yours.
Thank you, Shree. Yeah, so if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the questions box. And I do have one for you. Is a dedicated team required for digital transformation projects, and why?
Can you say that again? Sorry, there was a bit of a glitch.
No problem. Give me just a second here. So, oh, sorry. I lost it on my screen. I lost the window for a second. I apologize. Is a dedicated team required for digital transformation projects, and why?
Oh, okay. That's a good question, right? I mean, so the let me put it in a couple of different flavors, right? Best case scenario, you need dedicated teams, right? You want the project to succeed, you need dedicated teams. It demonstrates intent, it demonstrates focus, it demonstrates that the organization is really serious about these things. And so, yeah. And the most important thing is if you have dedicated teams, the work gets done, right? At the end of the day. It's not about just simply dedicating a team and hoping that somebody else does the work. So absolutely. But then there are small companies that may not have the wherewithal to have dedicated teams. What do you do there, right? So it's you gotta look at it on both ends, right? And try to make your own decision as to whether or not you can do this. But if you don't have dedicated teams, right, and you're a decent sized organization, then there will be a bunch of different things that will happen. People, we have seen this, right? People who have multiple job responsibilities, that is, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. Oh, but I will also do a PLM implementation, or I will also do an MES implementation. You know, it diverges from the focus, right? And so they're not able to deliver as effectively as they would have if that was their only responsibility. And a lot of times this is important. The other thing with dedicated teams is dedicated teams will usually have participants from different stakeholder departments within the company. And that's very important. Otherwise, you're building something in your ivory tower and you'll bring it down and then nobody use it, right? It will be a research project. So I think there are a bunch of different reasons, and there was an article I had written on dedicated teams, and there was a webinar earlier as well. I think that I'd point you guys to look at all the different reasons that dedicated teams are a must for some of these projects to succeed.
Great, thank you. One more question. So kind of going off of that also, where does executive leadership come into this, and how can the organization foster culture that is willing to take on risks head on?
That's a really good question. And executive leadership at the end of the day is what is needed to make all these things happen, right? So for any of these projects, even though whether they start at the grassroots level or they're coming top down, you eventually need an executive sponsor, somebody at the top that can stitch these projects to actual results. So if I'm doing this, then it'll deliver me a certain value, and then that'll result in money savings or whatever else is very important. There were, I mean, since my background is in digital manufacturing and PLM, for example, I'll tell you that there were leaders in the past organizations that I've worked with, where let's say they were implementing a 3D factory modeling solution, or they were implementing a PLM solution, or whatever else, right? That the needs of that particular implementation for engineering, for manufacturing, or whatever was one thing, but this executive VP basically he went all the way through and tried to figure out, if we did this, this, and this here, then how does it affect warranty costs, right? And then we, the team, the dedicated team was basically tasked with tracing it, and we call it the digital thread these days, right? So you trace the digital thread all the way to the end and try to figure out who will be affected, what will be affected, and then that gives enough ammunition, enough material for the executive leadership to be able to, really support this, go behind it, and say, well, we are with you, right? And once the executive leadership is behind a particular project, everybody and their brother-in-law wants to be involved in that particular project, because then, all eyes are on that, and everybody wants to be part of success, right? So executive leadership serves many different purposes, and not the least is funding, right? But I think if executive leadership is really serious about something and they bring that project into their weekly or monthly cadence that they have with the other groups, I think that brings a sense of urgency, sense of purpose, and a bias for action.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Shree. Thank you all for your time today. And once again, we'd like to thank Shree for his presentation and for Vertex for supporting the Digital Enterprise Society and bringing this presentation to us today. I did, Shree mentioned the blog post that he shared with us. Don't be afraid of change during digital transformation, and I put a link to that in the chat for you. A recording of this presentation will actually be available probably within the next 24 hours on our website at digitalenterprisesociety.org/webinars. So we hope if you didn't catch the whole thing, you can find it there. And then I'd also like to encourage you to check out the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. You can find us on Apple, Google Play, SoundCloud, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Again, my name is Courtney McWhirter. If you have any other questions about Digital Enterprise Society, you can feel free to reach out to me. And that's it for today. We appreciate you joining us for this webinar. And if you want to learn more about Digital Enterprise Society, go ahead and visit us at digitalenterprisesociety.org. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Courtney.